How do you actually do these correctly? This is how you do it. This is how you do it.
Oh, what's up, guys? Enkiri here, and today we're going to review Revival Fitness and his video called You Are Doing Kettlebell Swings Wrong. So let's see what he has to say, and let's see if he's hitting the nail on the head here, or if he's, just kind of taking a big old swing at nothing but air. So let's check out the video.
You are doing kettlebell swings all wrong.
Oh, me too? Well, shit, I better pay attention then.
People do these pretty much every single day, and 99% of the time, people do them incorrectly, like this.
That is pretty pointless right here. He ain't wrong about that. So he's laid down the foundation for his argument now. So let's see where he takes it.
But here's the problem. The kettlebell swing, guys, is a hip hinge movement. It is meant to ballistically train, ballistic meaning with momentum, with a lot of speed and force. It is meant to ballistically train the glutes in the hips.
And I just want to interject right here real quick. What he's saying here is accurate. It's ballistic. It's technically plyometric due to the use of the stretch shortening cycle, and it's a hinge that works the hip extensors primarily, i.e. the glutes and the hamstrings, right? Excuse me. That said, he shows us a little graphic on screen here for a few seconds. And yes, this guy that he's showing us here is largely performing the exercise like a derp, right? But it is important to note that this first part here, this part that he says is improper, is actually pretty good positioning. It is not improper positioning as Revival has suggested here. The guy here in that first image is in a proper hinge. The glutes and the hamstrings are loaded, the knees are bent slightly, but not excessively, and the torso is almost parallel with the floor. And that is correct positioning. That is how you load the posterior chain, right? It's the swing is essentially a ballistic version of a cable pull through. The movement patterns between those two exercises are and should be basically identical. And you do actually want the kettlebell to move back behind you at the bottom of the swing, as that indicates that the posterior chain is actually being loaded properly.
Meant to ballistically train the glutes in the hips. That is the core function of the kettlebell swing. But if you watch this common way, I used to do this too, like I said, you can see this footage here. This is what the overwhelming majority of people do, and that is turn the kettlebell swing into a shoulder exercise. Right, you hurl it all the way up with your arms. It turns into essentially a squat-assisted front raise. That is not why we do the kettlebell swing.
Now, he's actually correct about this point, and this is something that I talked about several years ago in my video that discussed everything there was to know about kettlebell swings, a video I published a few years ago. As well, I believe that I also mentioned this phenomenon in an article that I published on my website back in 2019. But most people who do kettlebell swings do artificially pull the bell up to shoulder height using their delts because for no other reason than they think that that's how the lift is supposed to go, right? The kettlebell is supposed to come up here, right? But the reality is, it doesn't really matter how high that you pull the kettlebell. It's gonna go how high it's gonna go based on how heavy that you are going on the lift at that moment in time. And you should perform a mix of both light and heavy work on this exercise to hit different points along the force velocity curve and satisfy those varied physical qualities. It's the same concept as with the Olympic lifts, right? If you're an athlete, then Olympic lifts that are done at 70 to 80% of 1 rep max actually produce the most power. They can do that because the marriage between the weight on the bar and how quickly that you're able to accelerate that particular weight is what actually generates the highest levels of power during a lift. Power is equal to force times velocity. So a lighter weight, not a maximum weight, but a weight in the 70 to 80% range on a movement that is ballistic by nature, like an Olympic lift. This wouldn't apply to squats and deadlifts because they're not ballistic by nature. But on a movement that's ballistic by nature, like a kettlebell swing or an Olympic Olympic lift, then a lighter weight that you can accelerate more quickly is actually where you're going to generate the most power. Now, that doesn't mean that you should not also perform heavy lifts on these exercises, because you should. And those heavy lifts are actually what are going to drive the 1RM up higher and higher. And then as your 1 rep max gets higher, then you'll be able to perform your 70 to 80%, your sub max power work using heavier weights, which is going to generate more power. And then you do that cyclically ad nauseum, and the whole thing becomes symbiotic. And so on the swing, the kettlebell swing, ultimately the height that you swing the bell is actually kind of inconsequential, right? The only thing that really matters is generating a maximal hip extension contraction, regardless of the weight that's actually on the implement at the time. And then from there, you simply allow the bell to swing as high as it's going to swing based on the momentum that you generated from your hips. But you don't try to pull it any higher than that, artificially pull it any higher than the momentum would have otherwise carried it by using the arms and using the shoulders. Now, I'm not saying that you should go so heavy on your kettlebell swings that you're only pulling it up to dick height. You just look like you're locking out a deadlift. You should actually achieve some separation from your body with the kettlebell, regardless of how heavy you're going. But those heavy types of swings do actually have a very valuable place in the comprehensive training program.
So let's assume you stop doing that. How do you actually do these correctly? This is how you do it. Now I know, you might watch that and say, that's a very odd looking lift. That's really ugly looking. Does it really look like that? Yes.
No, it doesn't really look like that, guys. I'm sorry to say it, but that is not a kettlebell swing. I'm not really sure, and here's the thing. This dude, Revival Fitness, he's kind of a troll, right? He likes to fuck around, and I get that, and I often find it to be funny. I actually like a lot of his content. I'm not here to bash him, but here I am genuinely unsure as to whether or not I am being trolled. And I hope that I am being trolled, because if I'm not, and he's actually serious here, then that's naturally going to call some things into question. I'm not here to do that. I'm not going to dive deeper into that, so whatever. But I do have to assume that he is being serious here, though, because he's telling me that this video is a PSA. He's telling me that I'm doing my swings wrong, and there's no real indication that this video is supposed to be a joke. So we have to take it at face value. But this is not a swing, guys, so please do not swing like this.
Want to hinge back at the hips, get the kettlebell right beneath your butt, and then rapidly thrust it up. And then you're going to do that in rapid succession over and over.
So we keep watching, and it becomes apparent that Revival doesn't seem to fully understand what a hinge actually is. And I'm going to say right now, again, I like him, okay? I like his channel overall. He's funny in a pretty unique way, and I'm not bashing him in this video, but I also love kettlebell swings, probably more than anybody. And I stumbled across this video that he's telling me is a PSA, but he's giving out pretty incorrect information here. And it's information that I feel needs to be corrected in this case, because heavy swings, when executed the way that I teach them, have immense value for the strength and power-minded athlete. And that's a value that you're not going to really get from the way that he's demoing it here in this video, because what he's demoing here is not really a swing, and it's not really him hinging either. So hinging exists on a continuum. This is a concept that's been discussed by Greg Nuckols before. I know that for a fact. And a kettlebell swing, when executed correctly, is going to fall under the pure hinge category. The knees should be bent slightly as the movement's initiated, right? And then they do not bend any further as the movement progresses. All of the subsequent movement takes place at the hips, and that is a hinge. But what Revival is demonstrating here is essentially just kind of a quarter squat with equal action coming from both the knees and the hips. And this is not a hinge. And it really, what he's showing us here, it moves much farther along Greg Nuckols' squat hinge continuum than it really should for this particular exercise. As well, with such a small range of motion being utilized through the hips during the eccentric phase here, there's hardly going to be any pre-stretch put on the glutes and the hamstrings at the bottom of the movement, which means the force output during hip extension, the force output potential during hip extension is going to be much, much lower. As well, one of the primary benefits of the swing in the first place is learning how to seamlessly absorb and expel massive eccentric forces through the hips. But if you aren't actually moving into the eccentric very deeply at all when you perform the exercise, then you aren't getting that benefit at all. And you're shortchanging not only the resilience effect that, in my humble opinion, this exercise is fantastic at building in the posterior chain, but you're also shortchanging the hip extension power benefits that you could be getting from the exercise simply by blunting your own force output potential. So look, a proper swing is executed the same way as a cable pull through in terms of movement pattern, except in this case, you use momentum to create the horizontal resistance. Obviously, there's no cable here, right? It's gravity, so the resistance with no momentum is still vertical. It'll be up and down. But when you apply momentum, you can create horizontal resistance with that heavy ass implement. Resistance that you then have to counteract. And so if we look at his movement though, the large amount of vertical displacement that he's creating, it's just not part of the exercise, right? The knees shouldn't bend that much. The action should be coming from the hips. And the farther that you can get the bell behind you during the eccentric phase, and the closer that you can get your torso to being parallel with the floor while of course maintaining a neutral spine, then the more of a stretch that's going to be put on the muscles of the posterior chain, the hamstrings and the glutes as well. In that case, the greater the potential for force output will be during the concentric phase. Remember, this is a ballistic plyometric exercise designed to target the hip extensors, the hamstrings and the glutes primarily. The lower back's going to join the party to an extent, but it's the hamstrings and the glutes that we're really going after. And the nature of plyometric activity is utilizing the stretch shortening cycle. The stretch shortening cycle with a rapid stretch of the muscles followed by a powerful contraction and performed in a rhythmic and repeated fashion. And the greater that subsequent pre-stretch that you can achieve, the greater the force output potential during the ensuing contraction. As well, the greater the stretch on the posterior chain, the hammies and the glutes, the more resilience that you'll be building in those muscles over time, which is very important for athletes. And this is an athletic maneuver, right? So hinge away, do it heavy, do it powerfully, and please do it through a full range of motion. And just one last point I want to touch on real quick. As Revival noted in his video, this exercise can be a fantastic conditioning tool when it's performed with light weights for high reps or for large volumes of work or with great densities, right? However, in my opinion, and this is a little known tidbit, but in my opinion, this exercise actually makes for a far, far better overall power builder than it does as a conditioning tool. All you have to do to be able to do it that way is build your own T-handle, which costs like $10. And I've discussed how to do that numerous times, both on my website and right here on my YouTube channel. And I'll link some of that stuff below in the description for those who are interested. But basically, once you do that, once you have the T-handle, the sky's the limit, man. You can load that thing incrementally, and you can load it so you can jump up in 5-pound increments now. You don't have to buy a trillion kettlebells that are overpriced as hell, and you can load the damn thing as heavy as you're ever going to need to go. Personally, I've gone up to 305 pounds so far myself. I'm going to go heavier than that. And I did that by treating this as a primary exercise, right? A strength and a power builder, a true strength and power builder that I allotted the effort and mental focus of a primary movement for several months. I didn't relegate it to secondary status. And that's an important mental distinction in my opinion. And like I said before, you shouldn't always be going heavy on something like this. Sometimes you should be moving with lighter weights that you can accelerate more quickly and pull higher. But there's literally no reason why the movement can't be a staple for power development. I think that I've proven that, and I've been using it that way myself for several years now, and I highly recommend that you give it a try as well. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say here today. And like I said, I'm not bashing Revival Fitness here, so please don't leave him any negative comments or leave any mean comments on his channel, on his wall, or on this video, or anything like that. In fact, I would encourage you all to go subscribe to his channel and watch some of his other content and see what you think of it. However, this particular video was framed as a PSA, and unfortunately, it just went on to spread just as much disinformation as it was attempting to dispel. And since the swing is an exercise that I'm particularly fond of, I couldn't quite let that one go without chiming in with my 2 cents. And that's all I got for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I hope that you were able to take something useful away from it. Please remember to smash the like button before you go. Leave me some love in the comments, subscribe to my channel, all that jazz. And if you're interested in online coaching or training programs, then be sure to visit my website, www.enkirielitefitness.com, for more details. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.